Moves us down to public comments, and I've got a list here of 3 people. Brian Pager, come on up. 2025-0101 is what he wants to talk about.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners. My wife Linda and I, we both wanted to just come down and show our support for Resolution 2025-0101 in opposition to the Freedom of Education Act of the Government and push through.
That's 0102. Oh, out of order 01. Okay.
Yeah, so we just wanted to let us know that we do support that resolution. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Dane Chisholm, come on up.
Good evening. Put my thoughts down on the card so I'd stay straight here. This has to do with the out of order resolution in opposition to the freedom of education or the voucher bill. I started not knowing at all how to have an opinion on this, and I saw that, on a lot of different public forums, the opinions were very far and wide ranging. A lot of people have different ideas, and that's a good thing. Iron sharpens iron, so I'm glad that this caused a big public discussion. I'd like to say that the theme behind this bill is on point. Parents ought to have the choice to choose the educational path of their children and should not be obligated to utilize public schools that they have lost trust in. Of course, this is already the case though. Parents have the choice to utilize private education or homeschooling if they so choose. There's no rule that says they have to go to public schools. That being said, I'd like to be more specific as to what the great idea in this bill is, which is the tax-paying parents who do not support public schools should have the choice to utilize their tax dollars towards the education of their children in the way they see fit, and should not be burdened to pay taxes toward public schools they aren't utilizing or using, plus paying for the separate private education of their own children. Instead of automatically extorting parents for funding towards public schools, the intent to return those funds to the people so they can use them by their own accord is a golden idea, and as American as any other. The problem with this bill, though, and why I would advise that our public and its representation do not support it, are as follows. The funding that has been attached to this bill, acting as a somewhat literal blackmail for its support, and the nature in which it is being rushed through, is a large red flag. I don't know if people are aware there's a lot of funding for other funding that's not applicable at all to the schooling that's attached to this bill. Could be argued pretty easily that it's almost a blackmail. You need to pass this through and maybe you'll get this money then. The vague language of the bill that invites potential government overreach into private and homeschooling curriculums. This is something that I think a lot of homeschooling parents were concerned about, and maybe the idea of getting the money was a plus, but the potential for government to then interfere with what they have to do in the private schools and the private sector could be very problematic. The ridiculous policy that public schools would be compensated at the same rate even when their enrollment drops, so taxpayers will be paying double for however many students utilize these vouchers. This would provide no incentive for public schools to perform better when the enrollment they lose has no effect on their funding. Double dipping is just common sense. It's fiscally irresponsible to put that burden on taxpayers. So
give you about 30 more seconds there.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. In closing, I'd say, in its current form, this bill is not good, and we should not settle for one good idea paired with a ton of negative baggage. When a single issue bill is presented for school vouchers that clearly blocks government interference in private or homeschooling, I would hope that you would support it. But for now, this bill is not worthy of a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Dane. For 2025-0101, out of order, I need a motion from the floor to suspend the rules. Motion from Commissioner Gibson, second Commissioner Gillum. Any questions or comments?
Give me a second.
Okay.
Motion by Gibson, second by Gill, correct?
Yeah, Gibson, Gillum,
All right.
to suspend the rules.
All right, thank you.
All right, with no questions, let's go ahead and vote.
12 yes, 2 no.
All right, rules have been suspended. 2025-0101, introduced by Commissioners Gillum, Palmer, and Gibson.
The Honorable Mark DeWitt, Chairman, and members of the Hawkins County Board of Commissioners in regular session met this 27th day of January 2025. Resolution in reference, Hawkins County opposes Governor Lee's Education Freedom Act. Whereas the Hawkins County Commission is the funding body for our local public school system, and whereas the Constitution of the state of Tennessee requires that the Tennessee General Assembly provide for the maintenance, support, and eligibility standards of a system of free public schools with no mention of the maintenance or support of private schools, and whereas Hawkins County schools provide education to all students regardless of background, need, or ability, and whereas Hawkins County schools provide an array of specialized programs of study, including special education services and career and technical education designed to meet the needs of the local workforce, which are invaluable for meeting both individual needs and the requirement by the Tennessee State Constitution to provide a free public education. And whereas many Hawkins County students are economically disadvantaged and lack the ability to overcome the multiple barriers of accessing private education beyond basic tuition costs, including but not limited to fees, uniform requirements, meals, and transportation. And whereas vouchers eliminate public accountability by funneling public funds to private institutions that do not face state-approved academic standards, do not make budgets public, do not adhere to open meetings and records laws, do not publicly report on student achievement, and do not face the public accountability requirements in major federal laws, including special education. And whereas vouchers give more choice to private schools, not students and parents, as they can deny admission for any reason or no reason at all, allowing public funds to be used to potentially discriminate against disadvantaged or disabled students. And whereas this lack of accountability is fiscally irresponsible and inherently unfair to Hawkins County teachers, administrators, and other educational staff who dedicate their lives and work tirelessly to meet outlandish and unattainable accountability standards imposed upon them by the state of Tennessee. And whereas Hawkins County public school teachers and administrators have begged the governor and state legislators for more resources and removal of regulations that create barriers they face in educating their students, but instead are being met with a bill that is attempting to abandon public school teachers, administrators, staff, and students. And whereas Hawkins County is committed to maintaining local control of the Hawkins County public school system to ensure it reflects the needs and values of our community, and therefore be it resolved that the Hawkins County Commission expresses its opposition to the Governor's Education Freedom Act, as well as any other voucher legislation due to the detrimental impacts these programs will have on our students, schools, and community. Additionally, the Hawkins County Commission expresses its opposition to the Governor's attempt to attach this legislation to Hurricane Helene relief funds in an effort to strong-arm legislators to vote for the Education Freedom Act. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Commissioner Gillum, second. Commissioner Britton, Commissioner Rhodes, you're up.
So, I guess I'm a little uniquely qualified to talk about this, and of course, anything that I say doesn't represent tonight my role as an educator. But I am an educator. I've been an educator since 2010. I want to say first off, Mr. Chisholm and I had this conversation earlier, and he said it tonight, that if it's increasing competition, it's a good thing. And I would say if it's competitive, bring it on. I'll compete with any private school. I'll put any teacher I got against any private school out there any day of the week. But it's not competitive. That's the problem. When you tell me that I have to have a third grade child, and I'll speak as a parent for a second, I sat across the table at dinner one night when my youngest stepson was in third grade, and he frustratedly said with tears in his eyes, "I'm stupid," because he thought he was going to fail because he was going to fail the TCAP. Do you have to do that in private school? Do you receive a voucher? Are you going to hold kids back if they don't pass the TCAP? No, probably not, because you're not going to take TCAP. Here's the thing. If you want to include accountability into this bill that has been thrust upon us by those in the General Assembly, then you need to put the same level of accountability on those private schools that you do our public ones. Or you need to lift some of those restrictions on public schools and make it equal with private. If you take a child that's a student with disabilities and they enroll on day one of school, You shouldn't be able to 2 months later tell them to go back to their public school because they can't behave properly. You should be able to include interventions the same way the public schools do. If you are going to take a test that a child has to sit for 120 minutes and do 2 different parts on one day, tell that child in 3rd grade and possibly 4th grade that they're not going to get promoted to the next grade level if they fail. Now, granted, there are appeals and summer school they can go to. There's a process they can go through. But if you're going to do that to public schools, then hold these private schools accountable to do the same thing. Lastly, I want to say, because I don't want to get on too much of a soapbox, if they pass this, I believe that it will eventually fall to the local school districts. I don't believe the state can sustain an ongoing program that's growing with vouchers year after year after year. It's going to fall on local districts eventually. And if you don't know already, if you go look at some of our buildings, we have infrastructure needs that are desperate. They are absolutely desperate. And we can't take a high level of government telling a low level of government how to use their tax revenue anymore. That's what the federal government does to the state all the time. Why would we let the state do it to the local group? So I want to go on record saying I absolutely oppose any voucher legislation that the state would pass, first off. But if they pass it, bring it on if it's competitive, but make it competitive. Because right now, they are hamstringing public schools.
That's right.
Mr. Palmer.
Jason, I echo all your concerns. My wife is a special education teacher. And what Governor Lee is trying to do, and I want to make sure he hears this very loud and very clear. And I've told Gary Hicks and Bobby Harshbarger to pass this message along to him. What he is doing is ethically wrong. If you can give money, if you can tie money to this voucher bill for infrastructure and maintenance of your public school system, and you can give $2,000 bonuses to teachers, and you can guarantee that schools will not be penalized monetarily if a student leaves their district, then why not go ahead and do it? Don't tie it to a voucher bill just because you didn't get your way last year. And if, for those who out there who think this won't be coming back to the public school system, oh, it does. If you have a student that needs related services to go to a private school, they don't pay for it. The public school system does. Hawkins County School System will pay for it. Governor Lee needs to make sure he understands that people in East Tennessee do not like this, and we're not just a bunch of dumb hillbillies. So I appreciate every one of the commissioners if you would vote to oppose this. And our citizens need to be calling the state representatives and let them know.
Mr. Gibson.
So I agree with the comments that were said, and I'm not going to repeat those. But if you would be willing, I'd like to just ask Mr. Hickson just a couple of questions, if you don't really care to step up here. So, Mr. we talked about how this could be impactful a few years down the road. But could you speak to what the financial impact would look like immediately if this passed?
Yeah, I would like to lead off by saying I appreciate the comments this evening. I think no one is afraid of competition as long as the field is equal. You put the Chiefs from the NFL up against our volunteer Falcons, and you call it football. By all stretch of the imagination, it's a football game. They're probably following the same rules, probably following the same minutes per possession rules, interceptions, turnovers, that type of stuff. But the financial backing and a lot of the other things that have come with this voucher effort are equitable with what that Falcons team would face going up against the Chiefs. The cost benefit or the cost considerations are going to fall on the local level at some point, in my opinion. Right now we have 70% funding for public education in the state of Tennessee from the states and feds, 30% from the local level on average. Ours is about 26%, I think, here in Hawkins County, local level. When they say hold harmless and your funding model is based on a per pupil ratio of funds that each local education agency is receiving in order to meet those educational needs, and those students leave your system, and that's a hold harmless, that bill has got to fall somewhere for somebody to pay for it. And I think the scary thing for me as a taxpayer and the director of schools here in Hawkins County is that at the local level, I think that's going to incrementally rise if something like this constructed bill were to pass. 144 to 250 million annually is what it's estimated, and there's a big range there, depending on what's thrown into the caveat there. We have asked for facilities and operations help, because the average age of a school building in the state of Tennessee from southwest to northeast is about 62 years old. That means there's some that are well over 100. That means there's some that are well under 20. But the average is 62 years old. Ours is right there, 62 to 65 years old, average age in Hawkins County schools. We have been asking, I've been here 6 years, I've helped sponsor legislation to get gaming proceeds, online gaming proceeds from when that was passed several years ago, to help the local education agencies in each county, especially rural and poorest counties first, to help maintain their buildings. It doesn't do any good to use money to put window film on front windows when our roofs are leaking. But the only avenue we have right now for getting help is to come before this body and to say, we need to pass another bond. And our taxpayers pay for that. When they're sitting on this money and they're attaching it to a bill, all of a sudden it wasn't important 2 years ago. Last year, well, we may be able to help you with some facility money if you vote for the vouchers. This year, it's in there with relief money. And they don't even think enough about the people, the public, my opinion, not director of schools right now, but my opinion as a taxpayer, they don't think enough of the taxpayers and the general legislation right now to take it to a regular session. They gotta hide it in a special session. So a lot of what was said is absolutely true. How is this fiscally conservative when there's no plan that I've seen in any of the bills, any of the stuff you read online for ongoing payment of this? It starts out with 20,000 students. 10,000 of those who are deemed the lowest income of students in the state of Tennessee have to be within a 300% range of poverty level. You know what 300% of poverty, 300% above poverty level equates to a family? $175,000. Who is this voucher going to benefit the most? It is not going to benefit the poor students. It's not going to benefit those with special need. It's not going to benefit those that have behavioral issues that the public school has to take, because we take everybody that comes to our front door. It's going to serve those who are already taking that initiative and who have the means to go to private school. Homeschool came up. We work very, very well with our homeschool community. We have 200, roughly, students in Hawkins County that are currently on homeschool. We work with them every year. Some of them play sports in their zone schools because we have a great agreement with them. We've increased CTE offerings nearly 200% over the last 6 years because that's what our community needs. We give parents a choice right now. Do I agree with everything that we have to teach or how we have to test in the state of Tennessee? No, but it's a law, and I'm challenged to follow the law. If we want to do something to help education, bring it back to the local level and help us, let us, more importantly, make decisions based on what we know of our students and their needs here in Hawkins County. When there are inequalities at the get-go of a bill like this, such as no enrollment accountability, I can turn you away if you're special needs by just simply saying we don't have the staff or the ability to accommodate or intervene. I don't have to publish my assessment scores. And by the way, what's the purpose in putting a black eye on public education the last 2 years other than to gain support for this? We have met and have tried to meet some of the highest state standards in the nation in in Tennessee over the last 8 to 10 years. And what do we get? We get legislators who say 67% of third graders can't read. That's not true. 67% can't read at the exceptional reading level as measured by the state tests, which are some of the toughest in the nation. But I, like Jason, would put any of my teachers, any of my principals, any of my assistants against anything that you would find in private schools, and that's how it ought to be. If we weren't hiring the highest quality with what we could have, what we have as far as resources, we're not going to be competitive. But if the rules are the same, competition brings out the best. I say level the playing field and bring it on. But this voucher bill, as written right now, does not do that. It falls well short. You talk about a soapbox, I'll be on a soapbox. Why special session? Why include it with immigration and safety? Hurricane relief, that was brought up earlier. It's not just hurricane relief. Look at what's on the agenda. It's current, past, current, and future relief for our county. Mark did the right thing by saying yes, because his job for the mayorship of the county is to protect our fiscal solvency. He was the last one to sign that of the 7, but he felt strong on it. That was a term used earlier, leverage. That's not right. If between 65 and 82% of the state wants this voucher bill as written, then take it to general session. Let everybody be on record. Let the testimony be on record. Let the voting be record. Roll call record. But no, it's going to special session. I think the last thing we've asked for and have been consistently told, no, there's not enough funds. We've asked for facility help. We've asked for leveling, helping us remain competitive with city systems. We all receive the same funding, but city systems and those with higher tax revenues can put that into and support their teachers at a higher rate. We have a record of training some of the best teachers in our Northeast region in Hawkins County, and then we lose them 5 or 6 years into the process because they can get paid elsewhere higher. But I guarantee you, the family feel, the support is none greater than what you'll find in Hawkins County, and the teachers that have gone other places will echo that largely. But we've asked for those things, the facility money, the salary equity. One thing that's been said is, well, we've given you money for our teachers' raises the last 3 or 4 years. Do you know that on average that pays between 65 and 70% of what's needed just to pay our teachers what's mandated by the state? It's not 100%. And we try to do a little more because we're trying to close that gap, all while working to remain fiscally solid. So long answer short, I'm not in favor of this. There's a litany of reasons why, and it's not just because I'm the director of the public school system. I happen to be pro-choice on schools. I think parents ought to be able to choose, and as was pointed out earlier, they currently can. Do I think they ought to have a right to maybe be tax exempt if they don't pay into the public school system and maybe divert that somewhere else? That's to be decided down the road. But if the rules remain the same between the entities receiving that money, I say bring it on. I echo Mr. Roach's comments. Right now, this is far from fair.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Gill.
We finished, John?
Yeah, I'm finished.
Okay. So first of all, I appreciate you, Mr. Hickson. I'll tell you, going back to 2020, well before I was involved in politics, or you probably knew who I was, I called Mr. Hickson with concerns about school to do with COVID and all that. You're very responsive then. He's, of course, very responsive now. My point is, in saying that, is this. I've read a lot of comments online that, oh, you're just, public schools are trying to protect their pocketbooks, right? And they're trying to rid some things from locals that's relevant here to Hawkins County. And I'll tell you, my experience with our public school system, I have 3 children. from high school, middle school, and elementary school. All of them have been in Hawkins County. My experience in the education system, it's always been student focused. And these guys, from Matt Hickson all the way down to teacher's assistants, spend all their time jumping through hoops and jumping over hurdles set in front of them by state government, trying to do what's right for kids. That's what they have to do, and it's a shame. Mr. Roach, when he was my kid's principal, we had some things, he was on top of it, I mean like that, to take care of his students, and in that case, it happened to be my kid. These guys are jumping through hoops all the time, and it's so funny, when it comes to fixing education, the first thing they want to do is listen to rich lobbyists in Nashville who are giving them money. That's what will fix education, but never mind their employees who have been screaming. I mean, jumping up and down, half of them are leaving the field. I could name you at least 10 teachers that I know personally that if they had the opportunity, they'd quit today, and it has nothing to do with their bosses, don't have nothing to do with central office, it has everything to do with the system in which they're forced to work that is set against them, and it's a shame that they would then be told to compete against people who are set free and say, well, why aren't you doing what they do? It's demotivating, and it's downright dirty, and I sure don't appreciate it. Whether it's Republican governor, I'm as Republican as they come. If I was any more Republican, I'd have an elephant as a pet. But I tell you what, I don't care if it's Republican governor, Democrat governor, or the Whig Party governor, it's wrong. And I don't like it, and and that's why I'm voting yes on this, and I would appreciate all my colleagues doing the same. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Let's go ahead and vote, please.
Thirteen yes, 1 no.
All right, that resolution carries. Okay, motion to adjourn. Anyone? Motion Gibson, second Roach to adjourn. Please vote on your pad.